Hello, how you doing? And welcome back to the channel. Wales against England is going ahead in Cardiff this weekend. I did a video yesterday when the news broke that the match would happen and that the strike from the Wales players wasn't going to go ahead. So in this video, it's all about actually looking ahead to the game. Both Warren Gatland and Steve Borthwick have named their squads for that match in Cardiff, a match which is of huge significance to both sides. Wales have lost their first two games of the Six Nations. England have the challenges of Ireland and France to come. If they were to lose here, then we could be looking at a Six Nations where they only win one game. So there's a lot at stake for both teams, most of all, of course, because it is Wales-England. It is perhaps one of the biggest rivalries in rugby. Hugely exciting. So do drop a comment down below what you make of the team selection, what sort of game you think we might see. Like the video and also subscribe to the channel as well to stay up to date with everything. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to start with Wales as the home side, but also I think Warren Gatland's team selection is the more interesting. There's probably a little bit more to unpick there, but I will get on to England. In terms of Wales, though, I'll try and put it up on screen, so to save me reading out the full team in a list, you're able to see it there. Let's run through the headlines, though, which is 9 changes from that defeat to Scotland. So it's another Six Nations match where Gatland is making a number of changes game to game. That in itself tells us quite a lot, I think, at the moment about how Wales are just trying to find their best combinations, find some sort of semblance of form at the moment. But Mason Grady is going to make his debut in the centres. He replaces George North. Lewis Rees-Zammit returns from injury. He's on the wing, and Lee Halfpenny is into that back three as well. He was actually meant to start the opening game of the Six Nations against Ireland, picked up an injury. Liam Williams came in, but Halfpenny is now back at fullback. One of the, perhaps the most interesting one, Owen Williams starts a test at fly half for the first time. I saw the BBC saying it's his first test start full stop since 2017. Dan Biggar is on the bench. So you've got a lot of experience coming off the bench, but Owen Williams in Cardiff after what has been a tumultuous week for Wales to start against England at fly half is great opportunity for him, I suppose. And then also in that starting 15, you've got Alan Wynne-Jones and Justin Tipuric back into that pack as well as part of those 9 changes that I mentioned. But I want to circle back to Mason Grady because he's a guy 6'5", only played, I think it's 20 games domestically for Wales, hasn't got much rugby under his belt, but in terms of a sheer physical presence is a guy that many people are excited to see. I'm looking forward to see how he goes in this game. On paper, he's a very Gatland selection, isn't he? In terms of his dimensions, 6'5", I think he's like 17 stone. He's a big body ball carrier. It's a bit of a like for like from in George North in a way. I know with North, you're losing a huge amount of experience, but Mason Grady is a big guy who can play centre. He can also play on the wing, so he has a bit of speed as well. So I'm really looking forward to see how he goes against those England centres as well. I think is going to be absolutely fascinating. Lewis Rees-Zammit coming back has to be a positive. He has the sort of pace that can unlock a defence even with only a couple of yards if you give it to him. I wondered whether we were going to see him at fullback actually for this game, because I feel like a back three for Wales going forward could be Rees-Zammit at fullback, which we saw him play in the autumn, and then Rio Dyer and Josh Adams as well. But perhaps that could be a combination we see on a different occasion. Maybe at this moment in time it doesn't have enough experience for Warren Gatland. But as I said already, it is a team which has some new faces, if we want to talk about Mason Grady, or a face who we haven't seen for a while in terms of Owen Williams getting a chance to start. But there's still Alan Wynne-Jones, there's still Justin Tipuric, Talupe Faletau. You've got Dan Biggar coming off the bench. Wales fans, can you understand the direction that Gatland is going in at the moment? Or do you think it is that real struggle, which he's spoken about, to be fair to him, which is trying to bring new players through whilst also phasing out the older ones and having that balance in a World Cup year, I think is something he's struggling with at the moment. I think maybe this team selection is a reflection of that. But as I say, particularly Mason Grady, I'm excited by that one. All right, on to England. Again, I will put the team selection up on the screen rather than running through it. I'll just go through some of the headlines. Anthony Watson is the only change. He replaces Ollie Hassel-Collins, who's injured, so Hassel-Collins hasn't been dropped. And Courtney Laws returns to the bench. Get more on that in a minute. But this is an England side where it's kind of the tale of two team selections, right? You've got Wales making 9 changes, and you've got England with relative continuity from that victory over Italy. In terms of Anthony Watson, and we know the quality Anthony Watson can potentially bring. We've seen flashes of it for Leicester Tigers. He's had a lot of injuries in recent years, so we haven't seen as much of him. But if he can get back to his best or close to his best, then you know what he'll bring to that England team and the quality he has. I would have liked to see Caden Murley be given a go. Again, he still hasn't made his debut for England, despite his form in the Gallagher Premiership. I would have really liked to see Murley get an opportunity for England. It's disappointing that he hasn't, but it is what it is, I suppose. Henry Arundel is that replacement off the bench who we can't really begrudge. I just wonder whether Murley could have come in and start and then had Arundel coming off the bench and giving that kind of impact, adding that little bit of zip to the back three. But it's Anthony Watson there. Courtney Laws on the bench. This is interesting because he is a second row replacement, because you've got Ben Curry in there in terms of the back row. And if you remember, when Courtney Laws first dropped out of this squad, he was replaced by a second row. And many people thought, so maybe Steve Borthwick sees him as a second row. I think from this selection, that's exactly the case. And Courtney Laws previously has said that he's a back row because he hasn't really played second row consistently for a long, long time. He played back row for England. He played in the back row for Northampton as well. So that is an interesting insight, I think, into where Steve Borthwick sees Courtney Laws fitting into his team. And on the one hand, it's a little strange because Laws hasn't played there. But on the other hand, you look at the amount of back row options that England have. If Courtney Laws is such a good player and maybe they have less options at this moment in time, people might say in the second row, you get Laws in the second row and then you can still pick from that wealth of options in terms of that back row. But let's move on to talking about the game more generally, because I was trying to think about this and where is this game going to be won and what sort of game are we going to see? And the first thing I thought of is a big focus of England in the early days of Steve Borthwick has been getting their set piece back to a point where it is more of a weapon. And I think in Gatland's team selection, he's prepared for that in terms of Francis and Gareth Thomas, who are probably, I'd argue, Wales's best scrummaging props. I think he's specifically looking at that area. I think that's an area England will look to target. It was a strength against Italy. They were able to bully Italy, really. They physically outmuscled them. It's going to be a much harder task doing that in Cardiff, but I do think that is how England are going to try and approach this game. So it'll be fascinating to see who has the ascendancy there. And once again, it's going to be key off the bench. It's Dan Cole and Mako still on the bench for England. When I did a video earlier this week on the channel where I named my England team, I would have replaced those two guys. Personally, I think, maybe looking ahead to the future, but certainly with Dan Cole, he does give you someone that's going to come off the bench and will be someone who can do a job in that scrum, even though you maybe lose something around the rest of the park. The other thing as well is I think there's going to be an awful lot of kicking. I think it's going to be a tactical duel. It's going to be an arm wrestle. I don't think it will be that open, but kind of it almost comes down to me is, can Wales make the most of their chances? Because despite the heavy defeats they've had in the first two games, they have had opportunities in those matches. They had 62% of the territory against Scotland. They made more carries with the ball in hand than Scotland. They made 129. Scotland was 104. And even against Ireland, I know that they went down really early on the scoreboard there. In the second half, they did have chances. They had opportunities in the red zone and couldn't capitalise. That was the same against Scotland. So if Wales can improve that area of the game, all of a sudden I think it might be a really tight contest. But this is a game that ultimately is hard to call because of the build-up we've had. And on paper, in fact, you look at the build-up and you say Wales have been in turmoil off the field. The players have been threatening to strike. England have had, despite the unknown of whether the game would go ahead, they've been able to train and prepare as normal. So on paper, surely England are going to win. But I just worry and think that the emotion of the occasion, and it wouldn't be the first time that a Wales-England game in Cardiff, the emotion has had a huge amount to do with it. I think the crowd will be 100% behind those Wales players. I think they will have a chip on their shoulder. I think it will be a kind of siege mentality, and they'll harness that emotion. And I think it'll be a really tough afternoon and evening for England. That's my fear as an England fan. I predicted in a YouTube Shorts I did this week that England would win because the rational part of me can't get away from the fact that Wales's preparation has been so affected. But when you want to bring the emotion into it, is that going to be enough for Wales to do a job on England? It could well do. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you make of the two team selections? But who is going to win this big, big game in Cardiff? Also, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Drop the comment down below, as I say, and I'll see you in the next one. Nice one.